Hey guys, I'm Handyman Graham, and today we're making a super approachable hanging room divider. In today's video, Alexander's tasked me with making a hanging room divider for Sarika and Christina's dining nook. It's gonna help separate their dining nook from their hallway. So Alexander sent me a couple inspo photos off Pinterest, and immediately I'm just seeing this one room divider that's like in the shape of a squiggle that I just think is like absolutely perfect for the space. So rather than try to like do my own take on this room divider, I think I'm just gonna show you guys how to replicate this exact room divider at home on a budget. All right, so first things first, let's get some ideas down on paper and see what we're working with here. Because this dining nook is a little bit on the smaller side, Alexander really wanted to use the most of the vertical wall space. I think I'm gonna have this room divider hang above the article storage unit rather than be standing from the floor or mounted to the side so that it doesn't take up some much needed floor space. I'm getting some major Scandinavian MCM vibes from the overall design of the dining nook. So nothing says MCM more to me than some Baltic birch plywood. You see this at like IKEA all the time, and like just higher end Scandinavian furniture pieces that, you know, incorporate curves and bent wood. So I'm thinking, let's just cut this whole room divider out from a single piece of Baltic birch plywood. And we're lucky here that the size of the plywood is pretty much the exact size of the room divider that we need. So it's gonna be pretty easy to do, I think. All right, now that we got the plan, let's start making it in the workshop. So I picked up this sheet of 4x8 Baltic birch plywood from my local specialty wood supplier. Baltic birch is just a much more dense plywood than what you're kind of used to for like construction purposes. It just has like so many more layers. It's so much more dense. It's just gonna take to stain a lot better than the cheaper quality plywoods. So I'm just cutting down the plywood with my track saw, just the general size that I need. And once I have it cut down, I'm just starting to trace some squiggles onto the plywood using my drywall T-square and a pencil. So I'm following the inspo photo almost exactly so that there's 8 layers to this room divider. I'm double checking all my measurements and making sure every single layer is equally spaced apart. I've tried so many different methods for drawing semicircles, but my favorite method, hands down, has to be this little zip tie technique. I'm able to stick my mechanical pencil inside the channel on the one end of the zip tie, and then on the other end, I just drill a small hole from the desired distance from the pencil, and this will be our radius. This is so I can snugly fit a nail inside it, which will act as our pivot point. What I love about the zip tie is that it's rigid, so it keeps its shape, which makes the semicircle as perfect as possible, and they're commonly available. If you use like a chain or a string, there's a chance that you can pull it too hard or not hard enough, which could potentially warp the shape of the circle. I've never had an issue with the zip tie, so hopefully this helps someone the next time that they have to draw a perfect circle. Now I'm just moving the nail a little bit closer to the pencil, decreasing our radius for the inside curve of each squiggle. And now I'm just repeating this process for the inside of each curve. My biggest fear right now is that I'm gonna cut one side one way and then I'm gonna cut the other side a different way, and I don't want that at all. So I'm just gonna go in and like kind of like draw with some lines the parts of the board that are gonna be cut out. Make sure I'm cutting the right pieces and that the right lines get cut and the wrong lines don't get cut. This jigsaw here, they kind of all operate the same way. Trigger. This jigsaw has like a little plastic cover on it that you can remove, and that allows you access to this bolt here, and that allows you to change the levelness of the blade to the base. So this one I can tell is like off by a little bit. So I'm just using like a little square here. This just needs to be adjusted a little bit. If you've used a jigsaw in the past and you found that your cuts are just like always angled, it could be human error. It probably is human error, but it also could be that this base is just slightly off. There's just so much movement that that angle just gets worse and worse and worse. So I'm just gonna loosen this, make sure it's a perfect 90, tighten it, double check again. Okay, pretty good. Now I'm just gonna crank it down. Don't ever assume your tools are perfectly square and set up properly just because you bought them brand new or because you think that you have luck on your side. I've picked up this Ryobi multi-blade set, but it has different blades like fine cut, fast cut, some scroll blades. So they're really small. They're great for curves. You want to choose the right blade for your jigsaw depending on the project that you're doing. So I'm going to be using a smooth cut blade on the outside semicircle, having the blade set to a perfect 90, and I'm gonna be cutting on the outside of the pencil line so that I can go in with sandpaper afterwards and sand it down to the line so that everything is nice and perfect. If you take that pencil line away, then you're removing material that you can't put back. So always just cut on the outside of the line that you've made on the material, and you can remove that with more precision with sandpaper. So it's like an extra step, but that's okay because we're using a pretty rudimentary tool for this particular project. Just let the saw do the work on its own. Let the blade cut the wood. Don't force it, because when you force it, the blade tends to want to bend. You get a much cleaner cut if you just take your time and just let the jigsaw do most of the work itself. Okay, now I'm gonna replace the blade. I'm gonna replace it with the scroll blade. You have to put a pilot hole first in order to get the saw blade in. Ugh. Okay, the next method I have to make a semicircle is my router and this little router jig. If you buy a router, it usually comes with just this little plastic bit on here, but I remove the plastic bit and I put this piece of wood on there. I have the line going all the way down to the pivot point is here, and the router bit is right there. So then I can determine the height of the router bit, and I can determine how much material I'm gonna remove from there. I'm gonna do the outer semicircle first because I don't want to remove the inside material when I need that to be my pivot point still. There. I'm temporarily securing the router jig with a hammer and a nail. As you can see, I'm taking my time and I'm applying equal pressure with both hands. I'm kind of pulling with one hand and pushing with the other around that pivot point. I'm always rotating the jig in the exact same direction against the rotation of the cutting head of the router for maximum control. I'm keeping the jig pressed firmly down against the plywood because I don't want to lose control of the router, which is pretty easy to happen. I'm just repeating the process for each curve, starting with the outside semicircle, then moving to the smaller inside semicircles using the exact same pivot point on the plywood. And I'm repeating this process for each curve. Okay, we have some perfectly cut semicircles with the router, but I didn't go all the way through, and that's because I'm gonna go in with my jigsaw now, and I'm gonna cut in that channel that I made with the router. I'm using the jigsaw again, so it's kind of the same method, but it isn't. Because that router jig that I made, it cut an absolutely perfect semicircle, unlike the jigsaw. The jigsaw I gotta go in with the sandpaper and kind of like have to like freestyle sand it in order to clean it up. This one, I'm gonna go in with the jigsaw, and then I'm gonna go in with a flush cut trim router bit, and it's gonna kind of copy and paste that channel that I just made, and it's gonna remove the rest of the material that I don't cut away with the jigsaw. And I'm just gonna cut in the middle of this channel. I know this sounds a little bit like there's a lot of steps here, but it is actually very worthwhile doing it this way as opposed to the jigsaw. So if you have a router and you have a jigsaw, I highly recommend this method over just the jigsaw cut in the sandpaper. I think the biggest tip I can give you guys here, whether or not you're using your jigsaw or a router with a router jig, is just take your time, right? Just measure everything multiple times, cut slowly, cut precisely. Don't rush it because we're cutting 7 squiggles here, 8 layers, and we need every single layer to look perfect. So just take your time. Okay, now I'm gonna flip this over. Okay, so this is a flush cut trim, flush trim cut, flush cut trim, flush trim cut, flush trim. This is a flush trim router bit. So what it does is the bearing is the same diameter as the cutting blades. So whatever the bearing is pressed up against, it will cut almost a carbon copy down here on the blades. So because we already created that small little channel with the router before, I'm gonna use that to put the bearing up against, and it's gonna cut away all of that rough material that was left behind with the jigsaw. Does that make sense? Okay. I think this was like $30 from the hardware store, which is ridiculously expensive for a single router bit. But my gosh, does this thing come in handy. So I can actually remove the jig. We're done with the jig. Yes, there's a lot of steps. You can do things fast and easy, but they might not look as good. So that's why it's sometimes worth spending the extra effort, the extra time, you know, making things look more professionally done, even if you don't want to do it. So for those at home that just want to like bang out a room divider in like 2 hours, then yeah, just use your jigsaw and just use some sandpaper and, you know, sand down the rough cuts that the jigsaw makes. But if you have a little bit more time and you want to just make this look a little bit more finished, more polished, more professional, I'm not a professional, but like if you want it to look like a professional did it, router, jigsaw, and then back to router. It makes a really big difference. So I don't want to go beyond the half semicircle. My lines are on the other side of the material. So here we have the channel that my router made. This is the cut from the jigsaw up here. And I'm gonna just line that bearing up to here. Okay, so I've cut all the curves with the flush trim router bit, and now I'm just gonna cut the straight lines using my track saw, so I'm just gonna zip through those and probably just finish off the cuts with my jigsaw. Now you don't need a track saw for this, I just happen to have a track saw. There are like so many jigs and hacks that you can find online of how to make perfectly straight cuts with a regular circular saw. So you notice that I'm flipping over the track saw with every other cut because the track itself prevents the wood from tearing up with the circular saw motion. So my tip for you guys, if you're doing this at home and you don't have a track saw, just use some painter's tape and just put painter's tape along that line that you drew, and that will help prevent wood from splintering up when you're doing your cuts. Because the track saw blade can't cut into the very like small little semicircles that we cut earlier, I'm just using my jigsaw here to finish up the cuts. Okay, now all the cuts are done. It's time for me to go in with my sanders and clean everything up. So now that the edges are roughly sanded, I'm going with my router and a roundover bit and just rounding all of the edges front and back. I'm sanding the room divider down, starting at 60 grit sandpaper and going all the way up to 220 grit sandpaper to make everything nice and smooth. To hang the room divider, I'm pre-drilling some holes in the top of the room divider and inserting some large eye hooks. You'll notice I'm using a clamp here while I'm inserting the eye hooks. That's because the plies of the plywood want to separate when you do insert like a screw or a large bolt into the side of it. So this just helps prevent the plies from splitting apart. My tip for you guys is if you are drilling into plywood and you don't have a clamp, just be sure that the drill bit that you're using to pre-drill the hole is the same diameter as the screw itself, not including the teeth. What's great about this hanging room divider is that I can hang it up while I stain, so I can stain both sides at the same time. But first, I'm applying some wood conditioner, and this is just gonna allow the stain to absorb into the wood a lot more evenly. After about 30 minutes of letting the wood conditioner dry, I'm going in with English Chestnut Stain by Varathane, and I'm using a mini roller, but I don't always recommend using a mini roller for applying stain. It's just that I have to hit both sides really quickly because the stain tends to want to absorb and dry as I'm working on it, so I don't have a lot of time to work with here. I'm using 2 coats of stain here just to try to get those MCM Scandinavian vibes. Okay, I think the stain turned out really nicely. I do wish it was like a little bit more like reddish toned, you know, like a little bit more like oomph, maybe like a mahogany or something. I tried to use the red mahogany stain, but it was like too artificially red. So I went with English chestnut and I tried to put in a little splash of red mahogany in there, but it just didn't really come through. It looks nice on camera actually. In person, it's a little bit more of a muted brown, but I think overall it's gonna look really nice in the space. I'm hoping the polyurethane, the sheen is just gonna kind of bring everything together, make it look more consistent. So I've got this wipe-on polyurethane. Oh, that's the French side, sorry. I got this wipe-on polyurethane that I'm just gonna apply with a little rag. Once the stain is dry, I'm going in with 2 coats of a wipe-on polyurethane in a satin finish, and I'm just applying it using a simple painter's rag. Okay guys, that is it for the room divider build. Looks fantastic. While I was putting that polyurethane on, it was really testing the strength of those eye hooks on the top of the room divider, and it is strong. It is not going anywhere. So I feel like it's gonna be secured nice and safely in Sarika's apartment. So I'll see you guys on installation day. Bye. Okay, we're at Sarika and Christina's place, and it's time to install the room divider. It's a pretty straightforward process. I just have to kind of measure everything out, put the anchors in the ceiling, install the chain, and hang the divider. So I'm gonna get measuring. I've already measured the distance between the 2 eye hooks, and then I'm just accounting for the width of the media unit as well. I want the room divider to be kind of center in the media unit and center in this little wall here. Drilling into the ceiling is a little bit more nerve-wracking than drilling into a wall, just because there's more stuff in the ceiling. We have sprinklers here, we have electrical. So like always, I'm just gonna throw my stud finder up on the ceiling, just like I would on the wall, and just make sure that I'm not gonna hit anything that's unexpected. So just like how there's studs in the wall, there's joists in the ceiling that the drywall sticks to. So just measuring, and it's about 16 inches. So I know that there's, you know, studs there, and that would be ideal to drill into, but it's not center in the media unit. So we just have to offset it from the studs. We're gonna be using some heavy duty anchors and some hooks, and it's gonna be more than enough to hold that up. So my stud finder has indicated that there are joists in the ceiling, and I measured them and they're equal distance apart. So I feel very confident that I can go in now and make the holes for the anchors. My tip for you guys at home is I always start with a very small drill bit, and I'll just make a little pilot hole. This is a masonry drill bit, so it's not sharp. So if I do hit something, it's not gonna damage whatever is behind the ceiling. So the only difference between drilling into a wall and drilling into the ceiling is that all the dust wants to come straight down. So I just used a coffee cup here, a paper coffee cup, and I'll just drill a little hole in the bottom of it, and then that will just help with the dust collection. Okay, so drilled into the ceiling. There's an empty cavity above, so I feel confident that I can go in now with the drill bit for the anchor. Okay, look how much dust I saved from going on the floor. Okay, now I'm putting in the anchors. Just have to tap it with the hammer. There's one, and then just one more. These hooks come with a bolt, and you can attach it to this butterfly anchor, but it also comes with regular anchors. It comes with a screw bit, so you can like put it into a stud. Yeah, very versatile. What I don't want is for this room divider to come crashing down. So I'm just making sure that those wings are like open behind the drywall and that it's like fighting properly.
Why are you doing that?
I'm just making sure that it's like opened behind the ceiling. You just kind of have to like finagle it. There's also some insulation back there which is preventing it from like opening properly. I'm gonna hang some chain now. This is just some extra chain I had laying around the workshop. It's like a brushed brass color, which I think goes with the overall vibe here. Yeah, I think this chain was left over from a light fixture that we installed one time, but I think it'll work. Nice. That's cool.
Whoa. Oh my god.
All right, now it's time to talk about what I learned and what I could do differently on this DIY project. And I could have saved a ton of time and energy had I not rounded all of the edges. Because if you think about it, it was like front and back, 2 edges on the squiggle, 8 layers all the way down. If we just kept those edges nice and square, you know, I probably wouldn't have had to sand as much, but I just love the look of the rounded edges, and it sits right in the middle of the article storage unit, so it just looks like so intentional. It does such a great job splitting up the space. It's just so cool looking. And I hope Sarika and Christina enjoy it as much as I did making it. All right, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.